and try to remember how to do this. I think at 10 seconds. There we are. We're on Satterwhite Live.
Thank you, Daniel. Good morning, everybody. It's September the 3rd, and we start off with our beliefs here at Satterwhite. We at Satterwhite are Christians. We're not ashamed of our faith. We kneel to God only and to no man. We love America. We stand proudly for the pledge and for our national anthem. We're proud of our flag, our military, law enforcement, and all our first responders. We revere our founding fathers and our Constitution. We will fight to the death for our families, our country, and our God. Obviously, we're not very politically correct around here, but y'all knew that already. Hopefully, you wouldn't be watching if you thought that we were. Hey, before we get rolling, let me just tell you, I want to introduce somebody new, Danny. In our Utah office, we got a new guy in sales there, Mark Henline. Old friend of mine. I've known him for a number of years. He was the editor and publisher of the local paper there in Gunnison, Utah, and wanted a little something else to do, and so he's on board and going to do us and you a wonderful job if you're visiting that Utah office. This week, what a week it's been. We, a week ago, of course, Laura hit South Louisiana, extreme southeast Texas. The brunt of it was near Lake Charles, Louisiana. And, I can't tell you how proud I am of our folks here at Satterwhite and their willingness to jump in and help folks that need help. Just like with Harvey 3 years ago, our folks went into high gear. We have sent 3 trucks down to the Lake Charles area. First one we were able to leave out Saturday morning here, so about as soon as big vehicles could get into that Lake Charles area, we were rolling and bringing what supplies that we possibly could. We went again day before yesterday.
Yes.
Danny.
Yes.
Danny went with good old Derek Kewen. He is our go-to driver who volunteers to help other people. His hand is always up. Thank the world of Derek. Day before, first trip on Saturday, he and his wife Michelle went down. We found a location we could get to in the edge of Sulphur, Louisiana. Couldn't get all the way into Lake Charles because the roads were still closed, too much debris, down power lines, etc. Just a horrible mess, which Danny will go into that in just a minute. But we have, boy, that's quite an echo that we're hearing here, Danny. You got it. At any rate, Michelle went with Derek, and I told her that it's going to be a moving experience. Well, it certainly was. It really got to her and to Derek. Derek, of course, had helped in the efforts with Harvey and kind of knew what to expect as far as the devastation and the gratefulness of the people that we're there to help. I want to give some special thanks not only to our folks here at Satterwhite Log Homes, but to my buddies at Combat Warriors who have pitched in with us in this effort, and to Active Duty Men. That's a group led by Dale Pyland, a good friend of mine in the Diana Ore City area, but it's just a bunch of good Christian men that are basically on call whenever a need arises, and wonderful group of friends. Before I give it to Danny, I want to tell you about one particular customer of ours outside of Natchitoches, who, it must have been Monday, he called, and I was outside either accepting donations or loading a truck, and this fella called in, just wanted to brag on how well his house performed. Did you knew about that, Dan?
I hadn't heard this story.
Okay.
No.
What's really neat, he believes right there where they are that they had sustained 125 mile per hour winds. We had built them a log home in 2012, and he was just calling here to brag about how magnificently that house performed. He said in the worst of it, which they wrote it out, in the roast of it, he heard just a little bit of creaking and popping, but at 125 miles an hour, that's to be expected in any house. But he said, hey, no structural damage at all. Of course, you can imagine with that velocity of wind, how hard that rain is hitting a wall. And they had a few leaks on one wall that need to be resealed anyway. But that was it. And I said, well, what about your roof? And he said, got a metal roof. Not one loose screw, not a problem at all. And you know, that's one thing that can be said for metal roofs. If they're properly installed, well screwed down, and you know, whenever you're putting down most metal roofs, you'll use a tape between the sheets to help seal the joint. Well, whenever we're putting on a metal roof, Danny, we use our Sikaflex caulking instead, because I know how well it bonds, and it bonds those sheets together and helps them not peel apart under super high wind situations. If that metal roof is properly flashed and trimmed, you know, it's very important on a metal roof that you have trim that goes over the edge of the metal and then down on your barge rafter on the outside edge of your overhang. And a main purpose of that particular, you call that a rake trim, main purpose of having that is so that wind cannot get under the first sheet to start peeling it away. But that says a lot for a metal roof to withstand 125 mile an hour winds. And of course, I brag too much about our log homes and how well they perform under high wind situations. Tornadoes, hurricanes, whatever. I think we build the best thing that we can build.
You said that the first, 20 years, you never seen anybody out to take pictures after disasters, and I know that we photographed almost every kind of disaster. I was thinking of things we haven't photographed. We haven't had volcanoes hit a Satterwhite home yet, no asteroid strikes, no tsunamis, and that's about all we can rule out.
Yeah.
But you know, the company is right here in the south central United States and has built tens of thousands of homes right here in Tornado Alley and on the Gulf Coast. So there's no company that has amassed the level of experience with this kind of thing. And I've been on inspection tours with you myself.
Yeah.
So it's remarkable.
Yep, it sure is. With that, I'm going to let Danny make a presentation. He was with Derek on a trip down to Lake Charles day before yesterday, and he's got some neat things to show you and discuss about it.
Well, it was a tough day in the jump seat of a truck, which is not built for comfort, I'll tell you. But that didn't matter. You know, I was thinking as we were getting ready for this about you and I are both in our 60s. So 60 years ago was 1960. And that's just a year or two after the space age began, really.
Wait a minute. All right, you're barely in your 60s. I'm almost out of the 60s on the other end. Go ahead.
But, you know, I can remember when I was a kid watching Walter Cronkite on the news, and there was a phenomenal amount of hurricane coverage back then. And I guess in the 50s, they started monitoring the Gulf of Mexico for these storms with aircraft surveillance, so that they knew when they were coming. But if you roll back the clock another 60 years before 1960, 60 years previous to that was 1900, and the hurricane that hit Galveston, Texas in 1900 was the worst natural disaster in United States history. And they usually say, they don't know how many people were killed, but it's usually probably on the low side 8,000 people and perhaps as many as 12,000 people. The storm that hit Galveston in 1900 was not as powerful as Laura that just hit the Louisiana coast just a few miles east of Galveston, by the way, because the Cameron County, where this thing made landfall and was the epicenter, that's it's of course it's on the Gulf Coast, but it's right up against Texas, so it's that first county.
You better qualify that for our Louisiana buddies. It's not county.
That's right, parish. I'm going to have to be careful with all the pronunciations down in there. I was thinking, and I shouldn't make light of this, but a phrase that you often use is about fighting alligators. And as I was down there day before yesterday, I'm looking at all the water beside the road, and I'm thinking these people are fighting alligators for real.
Literally,
it was rough. So that hurricane, it was. Laura was 5 miles an hour sustained winds over that. So we're not going to go on forever. I talk too much when I get on here, but we're going to take 3-minute video, and this is, sorry folks, this is home movies. I'm riding in the jump seat of a tractor trailer rig, and I'm hanging out the window like my mother with a Super 8 camera on a family vacation in 1962 or something. But let's see what we got here. I mean, we were up here way before dawn, and these guys are prepping this truck. We were talking about trucking 2 weeks ago, but I'm going to tell you what, that Satterwhite yard, I'm thinking it's like the flight line on an aircraft carrier every morning. There are people all over that truck doing safety checks. Bruce was under the hood, and by the time that thing rolls, it's on a mission. And 5 hours later or so, we're at Sabine Pass going over the bridge to Louisiana. Just what I can shoot out the window, but and a lot of times I miss the most of it. Destroyed marinas, the power line trucks. There has to be thousands of those guys from all over the country because every bit of their power grid is on the ground. This is a little bit that's standing right here. But as we drove, we left Interstate 10, headed south towards the Gulf, and there was more power lines on the ground than still hanging on the wires. A lot of people, a lot of damage to houses. Look at this place. The roof tore off of it. A lot of those farm buildings, any structure made out of sheet metal just seemed to be destroyed. We got into places, and this is a week after the storm, or almost 6 days after the storm. And the highway's barely passable. This is why Derek couldn't even get in there on Saturday, but they've removed it. But we were still, they've cut the power, of course, to this stuff, but we were still driving on down lines in the roads. So this is the relief station, and I think this is as we enter Cameron County, Cameron Parish there. The National Guard's controlling access down there. So we have some high school girls, and they've got tents and tables set up. We're in this big truck, so we didn't get to go and see where the most severe damage is at all. That ice distribution, the line was long. I just didn't have the heart in me to point cameras at the people who were, that one young man right there is about the only fellow, but the lines were long, getting gasoline, fuel, and Derek, he can drive that Moffett. That thing's carried a whole lot of logs, but it's carrying relief supplies this week. Lots of ambulances, just all this. Derek, very limited way to unload that truck. He had to move it 3 times. He was afraid if he took all the water off one side, it would flip.
Yeah.
And, so we had a lot of positioning. We sent down a lot of gas cans. All these people that you see here, these were not, they were there and taking a break and helping do the relief work. All these people, where are you people from? Where's this stuff from? We are so grateful. And this is Derek, them giving him a big thank you at the end of all that. It was just,
Wow.
It was incredibly moving. They were incredibly appreciative.
Well, most of them, we call them cousins there anyway, don't we, Danny?
Well, they probably are if we do our genealogy.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you. What else you want to say about that, Danny?
That's it for me today. We're keeping it short.
Okay. Okay.
But that's really a look at how things are on the ground, and the effort, I guess, is ongoing.
Yeah. If you haven't been in a disaster like this, you know, I'd like to ask you to volunteer to do whatever you can. You know, with several of the efforts that we've been involved in, I think we all agree that in the giving, we get more out of it probably than the recipients do. Now they are extremely grateful, and the need is still huge, Danny. You know, it's going to still be weeks before a lot of electricity is restored in South Louisiana. The needs are going to be there for weeks, and of course, the poor folks that had their homes destroyed, it's going to be months before things get back to any sense of normalcy. And so they will continue to need our help. I'd like to ask, we're going to, as long as we have goods and money coming in to our office, we're going to continue this effort. I hate to keep hammering on the same people that have given and given so much over this past week. I'd like for it to spread out, but you know, if no matter where you live, if you want to just send us a check, and we take the money and go to Sam's, Walmart, local hardware store, we will spend it on the things that they tell us down there that they are needing. But if you want to, you can just mail us a check. I'd like for the checks to be made out to Combat Warriors. I'm involved in that group, but I want there to be some distance between me and Satterwhite Log Homes and money that we handle. So make the checks to Combat Warriors, but you can use our address here, 8104 US 259 North, Longview, Texas 75605. Now, if you live anywhere within driving distance, well come on by here, and by the way, if you're close to our office in Ellijay, Georgia, or Chama, New Mexico, Gunnison, Utah, go by there and drop a check off to them, and they will see that it gets to us, but still make those checks to Combat Warriors. All right. If you're here within driving distance, we have one of our empty warehouse spaces behind the office here set up to receive goods. Love for you to come by anytime the office is open. If you need to come in the middle of the night, all you got to do is get a hold of me, and I'll be glad to meet you here and open the gate and open that warehouse up, and we'll unload you. But you know, you can drop it here at Diana. You can drop it at Diana Hardware. You can drop it at the Judson Fire Department, which is only a couple of miles from here. You can drop it at New Beginnings Church over at Spring Hill, a suburb of Longview. Bar None Cowboy Church between Tatum and Henderson on Highway 43, or Trails End Cowboy Church at Hallsville, which is on Highway 450, just north of I-20. They are receiving supplies there too. The way we do, you can drop at any of those places, and they'll either bring a trailer load or pickup load or whatever it is to our warehouse, or we'll send a semi over there to pick up pallets of water or whatever it happens to be. But you know, we do our loading here at Satterwhite's, so this is the jumping off point to head south from here.
You know,
go ahead, Andy.
I've had some feedback on my personal Facebook page about people wanting to take church groups down to work and everything, and Sam might know more about this, but I think that probably ought to be coordinated. As you can see from that aid station, the congestion and the amount of utilities. When I say rebuild the power grid, we're talking probably hundreds and hundreds of miles of power lines have to be put back up. And I think that if it were a volunteer effort, that the local authorities might be able to help people plan if a church group or somebody wanted to go down to help out.
A good idea. You're, through your church, coordinate with the church down there in hard hit areas. If you want to just go as a volunteer or take a group of people, you're going to have to be put up yourselves. You're going to have your own personal needs, food, water, et cetera, plus you're there to help people. So you need to coordinate with somebody on the ground down there that's already got the infrastructure set up to handle your help, okay? And if you don't have a church you can work through, you give me a call here at Satterwhite, and I'll give you the number of the relief coordinator there in it's either Cameron or Calcasieu Parish. Was that Calcasieu that you went into?
We were right in the edge, over the line is where they set up the into Cameron, which is the coastal county. But Calcasieu had a mandatory evacuation. That's the city of Lake Charles, the biggest population center in southwest Louisiana. They had a mandatory evacuation. Every human had to leave because that thing was bearing down on them.
Yeah.
That's what our satellites have done for us. Is the mortality of this storm, where you had 8,000 to 12,000 people killed 120 years ago at Galveston.
Yeah.
The mortality hasn't been great, but the destruction has been horrible.
Yeah.
And I would think that, in fact, the mortality, they say the worst thing that's happening down there is more people have died from improper use of generators, trying to keep the air conditioner in the refrigerator, so they're getting carbon monoxide poisoning.
Yeah. Well, death toll, has it hit 20 yet?
I didn't check this morning, but it's remarkably low.
Yeah, unbelievably low with that, the damage and how wide this monster was and how far it went up into Louisiana before it weakened too much.
I don't want to seem, so I went down and rode along with Derek, but I don't want to seem like I have any idea of what's needed or what's done, but other than what I can just see out the truck window. But my guess is if a church group or people wanted to go at this point, it wouldn't be to run the aid stations and everything. They seem to have that covered. But there was obviously a lot of damage on personal property. There's no people's garages and carports and anything made out of sheet metal sheds, anything like that. Those things are blown to the wind, and there's sheet metal all over the place. Yeah. And so I would think that it's to help individuals maybe clean up their place at this point is going to be, if you had a large group of people who could go down to assist, that's what I'd be inquiring about, and you might consider as what kind of clothing and tools and gloves to handle that kind of sharp, ragged metal, and assist people on their private property, because it's just, my mom's little garden shed got hit by a tree 5 years ago, and I hadn't got that cleaned up yet. I can't imagine what these people are faced with.
Yeah. That if you are planning on going, as I mentioned, coordinate with somebody down there. They ought to be able to give you some more specifics on what the most need is for what you're going to be doing. But whenever a disaster like this hits, there's the on personal property, there's the initial cleanup that has to be done. If a house had shingles on it or a metal roof that blew off, and if there's any structural damage to the house at all, then probably there's rotten sheetrock, rotten carpet. There's an awful lot of tear out that's going to have to be done before very much repair can be done on the inside of the house. So be thinking about that. There's a gigantic need for gasoline, gas cans, not just for the chainsaws for cutting everything up, which a lot of that has gotten done, particularly off the roadways, but for running these generators. Huge need. You know, it's hard, even here, you know, this far from the storm here at Longview, it's difficult to get very many 5-gallon plastic gas cans, that seems crazy. We've hauled a bunch of them down there, and what's kind of neat, Danny, yesterday, a buddy of mine from Kilgore, Zach McMillan, he came over. He's got an oil field service business, and he had some pallets of water, a bunch of other stuff, but then he had 3 55-gallon drums full of gasoline.
I saw those on the truck.
Yeah.
I went out in the warehouse and looked at the truck you're readying for today last night.
So, you know, that's a wonderful thing to do. But the food, the water, if you got building materials, basic building materials that you could donate, those will be grabbed up in a heartbeat down there because there's such a horrific need. Now, maybe we've kind of beat this horse to death and kept on beating him, but the need is great. It's a wonderful experience to help people in a disaster like this. Wonderful for you to experience and do it, and that's what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to help our neighbors. What does it say about more blessed to give than to receive? We need to live it. Thank y'all for joining in today.